Hello and welcome to another episode of Grange TV. We have with us two very special guests today. I'll do a little bit different. I'll introduce you guys with what I know, but then I want you guys to introduce each other. So you guys have known each other for a long time. So the winner of 3 Oakley Big Wave Awards, 2009 Biggest Wave Ridden, 2010 Biggest Slab Award, 2011 Biggest Wave Ridden, organised along with, I think, Ryan Hipwood, is it? The Red Bull Cape Fear. You organised the first one. You've appeared in many, many films and television series. I think both of you were the brainchilds of the crew, was along with Macario. I don't know other things. Your proud father, husband. I don't know what else you've achieved. You sound like an annoying overachiever, Mark. And Richie, a Smashers alumni, UFC veteran, big wave surfer, author, and also appeared in many films and also the TV series The Crew. Again, I don't know if I've missed anything else. A proud father, husband. Thank you both guys for coming on the show. Did I miss something big there that you guys do?
I just want to talk about Richie's author accomplishment, because I went to school with Rich. We've known each other since like year 8, probably, at school. And I don't know that Rich can read or write. So just explain yourself. Big selling author.
English is a second language.
I asked Richie earlier to send you a text and his nose bled as he was doing it.
Heaven forbid he uses technology in his life.
Yeah.
Can you introduce Mark? Like, tell me who Mark is.
Well, me and Mark were in our early teens, and Mark's just it was always been a phenomenal service. But he's a year older than me, someone I've always looked up to, and we were just in Maroubra board riders together, and we grew up down in Maroubra Beach in the surf club, travelling, surfing, competing in surf comps. Both got the big wave bug, because the guys from the beach, like the Aberrin brothers and Wayne Cleveland, they were kind of pioneers in big wave surfing in our community, and we followed that trend. And Mark just took to it like a duck to water, and I just was tailing, behind him, trying to chase and do what he was doing with Kobe Aberrin, and had loads of fun. We just grew up together, went to school together, still the same group of mates down at Maroubra that we've always grown up with, and he's just an inspirational fella who I've always looked up to. Like I said, he's had plenty of adversity, and the way he's dealt with that is something that I always reflect back on, whenever I'm going through tough times. And now he's living on the Gold Coast with his young family, Britt and Matilda, and still.
When you growing up, your vision of Mark, was it someone that you thought was just really good at surfing and it came natural to him? Was that someone you looked up to in that regard? Yeah,
it definitely seemed that way, absolutely. And I know Mark always says sort of paints it differently, but I always looked up to him like, he was just one of the best surfers on the beach, especially for his age. Mate, he was always a little different from the back too, because he sort of, walked to the beat of his own drum, still got out and had some fun with us and partying and whatnot, but he always had a goal that was set and was already pretty driven and quite disciplined to get that goal, which was...
And that's from a young age. You could see that from a young age?
At that age, and especially from our little group of mates too, or a bunch of rack bags, and discipline and goal setting weren't a big thing at all, so that's something that I always sort of looked up to and wanted to try take note of. It took me about 50 years to try and work it out, but I tried to take a page out of Mark's book with a few things.
Excellent. Mark, who's Richie?
I think the way Rich summed up me, there's so many similarities, but there's one glaring difference with Rich. Big wave surfing was not scary enough for Rich. Like riding 50-foot waves, having huge tons of water, like trying to drown you, was not scary enough for him. So he had to go off and become a UFC fighter. That's the glaring difference.
Small man syndrome. I told you, Mark.
That's what I put it down to as well.
Did it seem like things came...
Some element of small man.
Did it seem like the surfing and the fighting and whatnot came easy to Richie? Or how was your vision of him? Like when you would see Richie, did you think, fuck, this guy's got it all together, he can surf well, even though you're close? Or what did you see?
I mean, for the both of us, we were like, you got to understand, we weren't the best surfers out there. We were never going to be world championship tour level surfers, but we still wanted careers in the sport of surfing. And the pathway that led us down was big wave surfing, basically because hardly anyone else wants to put themselves through that. So we figured, okay, we'll just figure out how we can sort of manage the fear and the stress and go out and still ride these big waves.
Okay, when this is to
careers out of it, and then get to live that lifestyle.
this is to both ears. When you say nobody wants to put themselves through that for big wave surfing, what does that mean? Whoever, I don't care who answers.
People love riding big waves, right? It's one of the best feelings you can have in the sport of surfing, to ride a wave bigger than anything you've ridden before. It's a rush, but it's really scary. And then to want to do that month in, month out, big swell after big swell after big swell. Like, there's a lot of guys capable of outperforming either one of us in one big swell, but then to be able to do it over and over and over and over again throughout the year in, year out, that's a different mindset. Like, that's something that requires some sort of different level of motivation to keep doing that. And I think when other surfers, top level surfers, have the option to be able to compete on the world tour, then more power to them. If I had that, I probably would have taken that route, because that's a pretty enjoyable experience. But we didn't have that, so it's kind of like you're forced down this trail of surfing huge waves. But then as you learn to sort of slowly start to master it, you fall in love with it. Like, it's the being able to test your skills in that crazy environment, still be able to manage it. There's something about it that you fall in love with it. And for me, that's where I see Rich as, like, it's not that it became easy for him in the surf, but it's like he just was so addicted to that level of adrenaline, that level of pursuit after, like, doing something that not many people can do, that he went down that route and chased that in UFC. And that was that's pretty crazy to me. To me, when I watch UFC fighters, it's like, to me, that's the pinnacle of the management of stress, fear, anxiety, to be able to perform at that level, utilize and access your skill set at that crazy heightened level of stress, because there's the stress of millions of people watching you that will be there to criticize every action you take, watch you if you fail. But then also on top of that, you have the added element of crazy amounts of physical danger, harm, and possibly death, you know? So to me, that's the ultimate. Like, you're packaging everything in there. Big wave surfing is crazy because you do have the physical harm, like the danger aspect, but there's not that element of a million people watching you right when you're surfing. That's why I was so fascinated following Rich's career as he went down that UFC path and how he managed that. To me, that was it's inspiring. I think, like, every sport can learn from that.
Yeah,
went a bit off track.
No, please. That's like
Mark was saying, I felt like that was the biggest struggle for me. Anyway, get inside the octagon, it was managing that fear and stress, and, you know, all the pressures you put on yourself. But like you said, you're under a bit of a microscope. And surfing, I think we were so lucky in the fact that we grew up with such a tight knit group of mates who were all trying to chase that same goal, you know. And it was super competitive. It was loads of fun. There was a lot of camaraderie, and that also, I think we were lucky that we weren't doing it one out. Otherwise, it would have been much harder to achieve and push yourself, chase that swell after swell, if we weren't doing it with such a close, good bunch of mates. And and then when it came to fighting, it was just exposure therapy, just like surfing. And, you know, the more I sort of put myself in that environment, where, you know, when I first saw guys sparring, I was like, wow, yeah, they're punching the shit out of each other. How do you ever want to do that? And then, you know, you slowly get enough skill to try it out, and then you know, it's the same if you go surfing. You go out there and you expose yourself to it enough, you sort of get a little bit of comfort with it. But yeah, I did for whatever reason find myself getting a little more comfortable in the ocean, maybe because I grew up around it. I was around it so often. Inside the octagon, there was always that a bit more level of anxiety and fear, or stress. But I think even though it's a safer environment, you know, it sounds funny.
That's what I asked you before. Remember asking you after one of your fights, I said to you, what's scarier? And you said to me, you felt it was safer in the UFC than in the big surf.
Totally. I mean, when you're out in the big surf, especially some of the ways that we were chasing, you know, you're in the middle of nowhere. And the ocean is way more powerful than anything you can experience in the octagon, you know. And things go pear-shaped pretty quick, and And like we've seen lately too, just being in environments where big fish too, they're always in the back of your mind. But things go pear shaped. There's no assistance. There's no help. Like Mark will tell you, we thought he broke his neck when we were surfing Shipsterns Bluff in Tasmania a long time ago, and that was one of the most terrifying things I've ever gone through for myself. And I wasn't the one injured; it was Mark. And just to see your mate lying on a boat thinking he's broken his neck, and we were like miles from anywhere, on this little rickety ab diving boat. We had to sort of go like 1 knot an hour to finally get back to our the harbour, and just things like that. Whereas in the Octagon, you've got doctors on right next side of the cage. There's a ref who can he can pull you out of trouble if you can't protect yourself, and also you got the option to tap or get out of there. So in that sense, it's far more safe inside in the Octagon, but it's still, I think, like Mark was saying, when you're under that microscope, that's an added level of anxiety.
It's a different. As far as anxiety, I definitely think that's the UFC scrutiny. I think is a term that we're probably saying, because you know, like I can't surf. I'm trying to surf, and like I've never fought, but I've competed in grappling, and I've been around it and that. And when I wipe out on a small wave, I actually always think of you, Mark. I'd just like you to know that in a nice way, because of that thing with Shipstern, right? Which I'm going to ask you to speak to in a second. But you take those little, like when I say more wipeout, like there'd be fucking little kids that just go straight past it, but you still feel the power of the ocean, and there's nothing, like nothing you can do, like when a wave wipes you out, like you can't stop it, and that's like my waves, which are embarrassing. I wouldn't even talk about it. You probably wade through them. But can you speak in particular to that moment at Shipstern? What happened?
Yeah, to me, that was like a defining moment to me, because a few things led to that wipeout that helped me understand that I needed to approach my career in a different way if I was going to survive it, basically. So down at Shipstones, Richie and I chased a huge swell down there, and there's probably, I don't know if you think this, Rich, but that was probably one of the biggest swells I'd ever seen down there at that point in my life. So it was kind of in the 15 to 20 foot range. Huge, and Shipstone's a wave that comes out of really deep water, then breaks on a shallow reef in front of a cliff face. So you have crazy amounts of power in the wave, and then the fact that it's shallow means that you can hit the bottom. Like, that's the added extra danger. And that's what happened to me. I wiped out on an average wave, and the wave picked me up, smashed me into the reef, and the back of my head hit the reef. I was really lucky at the time that I was wearing a helmet, and it was the only time I've ever worn a helmet in the surf. And I was wearing it because there was a camera attached to the helmet, and that was the only reason, because we were trying to get some new footage of what it looked like to be inside a barreling wave. And that helmet saved my life, because there was a hole about this big in that helmet. So that's what would have been my skull if I wasn't wearing the helmet. And just because of the force of the whiplash, I think what happened, and what we found out later, was just the discs in my neck kind of compressed on all the nerves. And then I had that sort of pins and needles and dead feeling all down my body and my arms. And that's why I thought I'd broken my neck.
How could you move your hands and feet?
No, there was a moment when I was underwater where I couldn't move at all. But I don't know if that was because of the neck injury, or it was because I was like partially unconscious for a moment. And then I was like floating and couldn't move, but I didn't know where I was at that point until I surfaced. And then when I came up from underwater and kind of got a glimpse of where I was, because you see the big cliff face of Shipstones Bluff where this wave is, and then it like hit me what had happened and where I was, and then the pain set in, like that burning pain. And by that time I could move, but I was in so much pain. And then luckily Richie and another surfer who was there, Dan Ross, they came in and rescued me, got me up onto the boat, but I was kind of screaming in pain, like my neck. And so what they did was sort of, as best they could, just brace my neck using towels and stuff, and laid me down on the boat. And we're in 20-foot seas, so the boat's rocking and bouncing, and I'm freaking out in how much pain I've got. And so these guys are all holding me down to try and to hold me stable, just in case I'd broken my neck and then that was going to split my spinal cord. That was the thinking that was going on. And it was so terrifying, because it took probably 8 hours to get from where we were back to a hospital and then get scans on my neck. And in that 8-hour period, in my head, it was just like, I'm never going to be able to surf again. You know, my career's done. The thing I love the most in life is finished. I kind of knew that I hadn't done the damage where I wasn't going to be able to walk, because I could move my legs and feel my hands and move them and stuff. So I knew it wasn't that bad. But in my head, I just thought about those type of injuries like Andrew Johns and those football players get when they injure their neck enough so that they can't ever play football again. You know, like they can walk around and do all other stuff, but then they can't play football. And I thought that's what had happened to me. So, and I was just waiting in that whole time thinking that, until the doctor finally comes in and basically says, man, you're one lucky dude. If you had have, you know, if there had been more damage to your neck, then you wouldn't be able to surf again. But you've just compressed the nerves. It's going to be fine. You're going to be surfing again within sort of 6 to 8 weeks. And he said to me, he's like, you'll probably be back down here for the next big swell at Shipstones Bluff. And I was like, I wasn't back down there for the next swell, or the one after that. And he was right. I recovered physically quick. I was surfing again, absolutely fine. But I was terrified to go back down there and surf. Like, that was such a shock to me, because I'd had thousands of wipeouts up until that point where they look crazy, but you come up absolutely fine without a scratch on you. And that was the first time it became really apparent that things can go that wrong, that this sport is that dangerous. And it just made me rethink the way I was doing what I was doing, because at that point I felt like I was burning myself out. Like, I wasn't taking care of myself, and I would turn up to swells so run down and absolutely exhausted.
From what?
But still go out there and surf huge waves.
What were you burnt out from?
Just the constant, there were a few different things. Firstly, like the standard things of horseshit diet, not sleeping well, overtraining, and then the main one that I found the most interesting was, and you guys would know this for sure, like being athletes and performers, is that when you have this, what happens in surfing, right? You see a huge swell on the forecast. So you know that in a week's time, 7 days time, you're going to be surfing 20, 30 foot waves, terrifyingly huge waves, right? And when you get that forecast, you're like, okay, for the next 7 days, it's like your mind goes into overdrive, right? It's like, for me, it's like someone turns a TV on that sits in the back of my head, and that TV just plays out all the different ways that I might wipe out and drown or die in this swell in 7 days. Right. And if I allow that TV to grab my attention enough and sort of dwell on those thoughts and that train of thought too much, by the time I turn up on the day to surf, my body physically feels like I've been through 1,000 wipeouts before I've even put a foot in the water. And that's that mental stress, that projection of what might happen in the future, taking a physical toll on your body, even though in that whole week you haven't even been through one wipeout, but it's just the thoughts in your head.
But physiologically,
Yeah,
your amygdala's pumping and the adrenaline's pumping, and so it's actually, people say it's all in your head. It's like, nah, dude, your head, first of all, head runs a show, and then physiologically it affects it, like your serotonin levels, dopamine, and your adrenaline just pumping because your amygdala is just going off, like you're in fear. That's what you are.
Exactly that. And then for me, it was like, okay, how can I manage that? How can I detach from those thoughts enough so that I can turn up on the day and not feel exhausted? Because the bad wipeouts, and especially that one at Shipstones, they always happened when I was run down and exhausted. Every time I turn up on a day not feeling exhausted, and when I say exhausted, I mean like physically sick, like you feel like you've got the flu, you could have fever, muscle aches, like proper fatigue from that stress, And
even just
so to me, that was managing that became the most important thing for me. And all the things help, like diet, exercise, preparation is the main one. Like, you got to do the amount of preparation. If you've left no stone unturned, then that kind of quiets that mental chatter down a fair bit. But then it's all the like smaller mental hacks that you can utilize so that you don't get completely caught up in those negative train of thoughts. Because, and that's different for everyone. Like, I'm hyper neurotic, where I have a tendency probably to overthink things too much and think, you know, really bad thoughts all the time. Like, so it's, some people don't get that as bad, but for me, like, that just became the most important thing. And this is whatever I could do to break that connection. And then I just have over the years used tens and 20, 30 different techniques week in, week out that kind of help me manage that. Everything from different meditation style techniques, from picking up different hobbies that I can do during that week lead up that will take my mind off what I'm about to do. All those different sorts of things. It just became so apparent how important they were to me. And that's why I'm so fascinated when I watch UFC fighters, because it's like, man, what are you doing? You know, because you know, 2, 3, 4 months out when you're going to be fighting on that exact day, who you're going to be fighting, which is even worse, because then that it's given your brain all this information to imagine all these scenarios. But then in training, you got to go through all those scenarios and play them out over and over again. So to me, it was always like, that's so fascinating how you must manage that exhaustion, you know. But then it's like, I guess that there is the crazy come down after the fight of being, the fatigue must set in for months, and that's why you can't fight back to back to back to back, you know. So,
and like I said,
yeah, I find that aspect of performance fascinating.
The way you explain it, Marky, with that TV going on the back of your head, that's exactly what it's like, you know. I mean, it was for myself too. And as the fights got bigger and the opportunities got bigger, the stage got bigger, that TV was started to play louder, you know. And it was I totally feel you on that. It was exhausting, just constantly thinking about scenarios and what's going to happen. And then, you know, add a really large training week on top of that for months leading into the fight. You're cutting weight and dieting, but it's that mental exhaustion. I think it's probably key to like why I felt so burnt out in many of my lead ups too, because in your downtime, in your rest time, it's just the opposite. You're still there. You still got sweaty palms. You're still thinking about your opponent and, you know, this situation, that situation, and yeah, the way you just explained it, I can really relate to, because I experienced the same, not so much with surfing, you know what I mean? Like, I sort of, because I could never read the forecast as good as you, John. Like, I was just like,
you didn't even know.
I had no idea until 2 or 3 days out, where you were like, Richie, pack your ball bags. We're going on Tassie, or we're going on WA. So I was lucky in that respect.
Yeah, you'd only have 1 or 2 days to worry about.
Yeah, I was need to think. I couldn't turn the computer on to even check the forecast. So, but for fighting, totally, I'd burn myself out thinking about it and wonder why. Like, you know, I'm eating well. I'm getting enough rest. Why do I feel so rubbish? And I've got no energy for training so much. And
sometimes the weight won't go down because, like, the cortisol, the adrenaline, the cortisol makes you hold the weight. Exactly, I hold the weight in my stomach.
Yeah, that's exactly my experience. When I was fighting at my lightest, I was walking around at my heaviest. Like, I'd never walked around 70 kilos in my life until I started to fight at 57 kilos. Then I couldn't get under 70, like, you know, in my day-to-day life. It was crazy. And I think, so the weight cuts added more stress to it, which I'm sure, you know, increased that cortisol and made it tougher to get off. And then, yeah, but, man, like you mentioned, it's the control center. If you can get the head right and start implementing some of those little hacks that you're talking about, Mark, life becomes a lot easier and a lot more manageable, and then your performance will benefit, you know?
Do you know who Semi Schilt is, Mark? Have you ever
What's
heard?
His name? Say again.
Semi Schilt. Have you ever heard of him?
I have heard of that name.
He's basically the best kickboxer of all time at the point. Like, he's beaten everyone from his generation, and he also has wins over Badahari and Rico Verhoeven. He won 3 K1s and really a 4th because K1 stopped and the glory started.
He would have been watching. Remember in Philippines, Mark, or watching the K1 videos, all the videos they had at his resort was staying at. It would have been.
He's won the most out of most K1s, and that not only do you know you're going to fight, say in 3 months, but then when you get there, you have to fight. If you win the whole thing, you probably have to fight 3 times in the night, and so you fight, and then you have another hour, 2 hours to wait till your next fight. And if you win that one, you got another hour until the next one. And you're not fighting pussies, you're fighting probably,
Mark Hunt,
yeah,
Co-Crop.
yeah, and you're fighting.
my
It's
God.
it's for the physically, I would say, harder than the UFC in the fact of how the rounds are made. They're short rounds made for complete excitement with heavyweights at that time too. And when I had him on the show like last week, it's not out yet, but I had him on the show. It will be out probably by the time this one's out. It will be out. So, and one of the things that I noticed with him straight away, and I said it to him, was like he's got like this fucking focus like through the screen, you know, and he's retired, but he's got like this intensity that you're like fucking it's intimidating, you know what I mean, through the screen. And then I was talking to him, I was like, how'd you do this, Sam? And how do you win? Okay, 1 is hard, but how do you win 4? You know what I mean, at that level? And the stuff that he was saying, it wasn't like, I don't think he even knew, but he was just able to, like, he goes, no, you just get there and you just focus on the next thing, and then you focus on the next thing. He goes, and then I have a fight. He goes, and then I just think, okay, now it's time to relax. He goes, and I just don't think about things. And I was saying to him, dude, do you understand how much, like, if you could bottle that, what that would mean? Because like what he's saying, he's going, no, it's like you just,
So simple to him.
yeah.
You just don't think you're like, yeah, that's such a gift, a talent to have in that. No.
Yeah, and then you put that into like a genetic gift. He looked like a genetic engineer's wet dream. He's like 6'11", 130 kilos, and athletic. Like that's what he actually is, you know. And but that ability to just fucking control that is insane. And in your environment, the thing that I find that even worse than fighting though, the big waves, is you have rocks, you have reef, you have big waves, you have the jet ski fucking up, you have a jet ski hitting you, you have sharks, you have all sorts of stuff. What's the worst wipeout that you've had, either one of you, both of you, the worst wipeout?
Wow.
What's yours, Rich?
I'm sitting here now and a sling just come out of shoulder, Rico. So probably say physically, with my worst wipeout was the last wave I caught, which was about a month ago over at Cape Solano, Cape Fear, or ours, the wave that me and Mark sort of grew up surfing, and where he had the Red Bull Cape Fear comp. It's an amazing wave, but it does have similar to Shipsterns. It comes out of super deep water, breaks on a really shallow shelf in front of cliffs. Also has a bit of backwash too, so you get steps like the Shipstern on occasion, but also you get backwash coming off the cliffs too. And it was a Sunday afternoon. The swell was picked up, went from sort of 4 to 6 foot to 10 to 12 foot within a few hours, which is pretty rare for like the East Coast. And it was just the last one more before we go in. It was getting dark, and it just got. It was a big wave. It was like a 10 foot, and it just kind of ran off the reef a bit and just went really square at the start, and then kind of went pinched a little bit. And I was just in the wrong spot, at the wrong time, and the lip landed on my shoulder, and just blew it to bits. And
Wait, just the sheer force of, so it wasn't the wipeout that dislocated your shoulder, it was the lip of the wave that broke.
Yeah, it was just that impact. Yeah. And initially, I thought my first concern was my teeth. It hit me so hard, I slammed my mouth shut, and I thought I chipped all my teeth. So I'm rolling around in the water, going like just rolling my tongue around my mouth, trying to find what teeth I've lost. And then I had that sensation down my arm, like that tingle. I was like, oh, that kind of feels familiar because I've dislocated a shoulder before, and realised my shoulder was out because I couldn't swim. I couldn't move my arm, and then so that was, that's obviously in the forefront of my mind. So that's probably the worst one. And definitely it's the worst, the worst wipeout I've had that I've come out with such physical damage. You know what I mean? I feel pretty lucky over years of doing silly stuff that never had any major surgery.
Is that the shoulder you'd always dislocate?
I did dislocate my left shoulder surfing again in similar circumstances, but smaller waves on the beach. And the lip landed on my shoulder and dislocated my left shoulder before my fight down in Melbourne, the UFC in Melbourne. But that went straight back in. I was able to rehab and fight within 10 weeks. So I kind of went into this injury kind of optimistic, like, I've had a shoulder reconstruction before. A shoulder dislocation before. I know what to expect. But days after the injury, I started to realise this feels totally different. I've got no movement. It feels super loose whenever I walk, or if I was to jog or whatever, I could feel it moving around. And then got the MRI. We saw me and Mark's good mate Wade Harper, who's put us both back together, and he actually laughed because he likened to an injury that Mark's had in the past too from surfing. Like 100-foot jaws, and just had all the ligaments, all the tendons, the rotator cuff were all blown to bits. So I had to go on a knife, and that's like I said, that's what's kind of keep it in perspective. Like it's the first time I've had to have something like this in my life after having a pretty lucky career injury wise. But that was a bad one because looking back at it too, the impact hit me so hard. I could have been unconscious pretty easy or hit the reef, and just when I think back of how hard that hit me.
That's ridiculous though that it hits that hard.
Was there waves behind the one that you wiped out on? Because you got to understand, this wave breaks only 10 feet from a cliff. So where you fall off on the wave and you finally surface, you're usually 1 or 2 meters from a rock face with more waves approaching to smash you into that rock face. So Richie, you would have been there with one arm trying to fight against that. Well, I'm hoping it must have been the last wave of the set, was it? Or
yeah,
such a big wave.
That's again, it's keeping everything in perspective for him because I was so lucky because 1 or 2 waves before this, I pulled it. It was a pretty big one, but it was one of the first waves of the set. I didn't make it out the barrel, and I came up to just like 12 footers on the head, and I've never been washed so far in the bay before because it was just like one after the other pop up just before I get a breath, and another whitewater would smash me, and I'd be like rolling across rocks and all the way to where you've got to finally get in, and if you're to paddle and get back at the rocks, it's a couple hundred meters into the Botany Bay, and I end up all the way in there. And had that have happened on the wave I did my shoulder, I would have been in all sorts. I don't know if I would have handled it. So again, feel like I got pretty lucky there that when I did my shoulder, there weren't too many waves behind it, and I was able to get my way to the channel relatively quick and pull myself up on the back of the sled and get on the jet ski, and then so the pain and reality kicked in that my shoulder was sitting in my armpit.
So
that type of fatigue, that because I always wonder this with watching UFC fights. Like, because that moment when you're watching a UFC fight, it's like fatigue sets in so bad for one guy that he just cannot do anything. Like, and I always imagine that must be like when you're getting smashed by multiple waves, and there's this point where it's like you're at the mercy of the ocean. Like you cannot physically do anything left to fight. You have nothing to fight, even though it's such a dangerous situation, and you have all the motivation in the world, and you've trained so hard. You just cannot beat that level of fatigue. Like, is that what you hit in moments in fights or training where it's like because you stand from an idiot armchair perspective of being a spectator in UFC, you're like, why won't you just put your hands up, or why won't you just keep throwing them right now? Like, you could have won the fight, but it's like it must just be that feeling where it's nothing you can do can solve that.
I think I've hit that feeling more so in training, where your coaches and your trainers have structured the session for you to hit that feeling and hit that scenario. Luckily, inside the cage when I've competed, I've been exhausted, but always to the point where you kind of go. And a lot of time with fighting, and where you said, Mark, you're like an overthinker of a lot of things. Sometimes I can, when it comes to the actual act of surfing that wave or stepping inside the cage, almost as little thinking as possible for me is best. I want to go on autopilot and hoping all that training that I've done in the lead up, just kicks into gear. And it's the same when I'm surfing. I don't want to overthink what I'm doing. I just want to try and let go of the rope or paddle in and just go off instinct and not overthink it, because overthinking comes back to bite me anyway. But when I have been fatigued, inside the cage, it's luckily that I can click in that sort of autopilot and keep looking like I'm performing. I've never felt, like I said, in training, I've often just been so exhausted with fresh bodies on top of me that like you do spit the dummy a little, and you just surrender to it like I'm just getting ragdolled. And like it's just the feeling sucks. But again, like in the ocean, I've been flogged at enough times, but not really to the point where, like I'm sure like at Jaws or some ways like where it's super deep and you get pushed so deep so many times, and that level of exhaustion should be different to my wipeouts have been short, brutal, but luckily not pushed to the point where I've just got to surrender and just hope for the best.
There's different types of fatigue as well. I can only say it like within like a combat sport more than surfing, but I'm sure in surfing you'd be able to tell me this as well. There's like a neural fatigue that occurs as well. Like if you watch, one of the guys that does it the best, I think, is Nick Diaz. Does it very, very well to other people. So he walks people down, and like when he's like taunting you and that, he's giving you a false distance. So you think, I'm going to hit him from here. You swing, you don't hit him, or you hit him, but you're not really hitting him, and he's walking you down. And so what you're doing is constantly reacting to what he does, reacting to a feint, reacting to a taunt, reacting to his strikes. And the guy, he's very fit, but the guy, like, neurologically, you can't, that's the first system to go. You know what I mean? Like, the neural fatigue's the first one to go. So it starts to happen where the guys look really, really, really tired. And yeah, Nick Diaz is fit, but this guy that you're watching, it's not like he just rolled off a bar stool. This guy's fit too. But that neurological fatigue starts to, like, you start to lift your hands that second too late, where he's got you a little bit more clean. Then he's hit your body and you start to slow, shut down and everything. And I don't know, maybe does that happen in surfing?
Yeah, I think it definitely does if you like if you have a really bad wipeout, like on a huge wave. This happens off Maui in Hawaii, a wave called Jaws. So it's like the biggest waves that you can possibly paddle into. You're surfing waves like 40 foot. And when you suffer a bad wipeout there with a really long hold down, so you go to the maximum of your breath hold, where it's like you have like spasms underwater. So if you hold your breath for long enough and you really fight through the pain, and eventually your body will spasm a little bit underwater, trying to, like, it's like utilizing what oxygen is remaining in there. When you do that, then after that, I think that's where you feel that type of, like, fatigue, where your decision making goes completely out the window. It's almost like, in a way, you're so tired that it dampens your fear level, like, and you can then get caught out of position in the ocean, and then another huge wave will break on you. But even though you know it's dangerous, it's like you're so fatigued that you're just not thinking straight. Like, I always think of it similar to like a person driving a car. Like, you know, when you hit that moment of fatigue, when you're so tired, like people fall asleep at the wheel, like, that's not a scary experience at all. It's like the fear dissipates and you're just so tired that you just have to rest, and then it goes pear-shaped. And I don't know if that's similar. Like, when I was listening to you then, it's so interesting when, like, a fighter has that forward pressure and it's like the other fighter's fighting back, but it's like that, I feel like that sense that what you're doing to keep that fighter off you isn't working. Like, that there must be that sort of moment of realization, like, you're doing what your best you can to keep them off you or to hurt them, but it's not working. And then to me, it seems like it must create like a sort of panic switch.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, and that neural
extra fatigue, that it's like, oh my God, I can't do this, you know, like. And then that, and I heard, I don't know if it was Connor or someone mention, like, he mentioned it in a way that it was like an energy shift.
Oh, absolutely.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, there's a shift and it's like a confidence shift. Like, so one fighter's confidence gets sucked out, which then also sucks out all their energy level, like, or their capacity to perform. But then it's like, if they do land one shot at that moment and it wobbles the oncoming fighter, it's like all of a sudden then it shifts back and they're like, oh, hold on a minute. It's working. And then it's like, all of a sudden they get this spur of energy, and it's like, why couldn't you access that before? But it's like, it seems like it's something to do with like a confidence, like, panic response.
Well, there is
fascinating watching that.
There's been many studies where there is a relationship between confidence and arousal and performance. And yeah, definitely, I think once you're in that situation and somebody is taking your confidence from you like that, especially like you're saying before, it's also not like it's between you and me just in this room and then we both walk out. Even though you beat the shit out of me, you've got a black eye as well. And then I'm going to say, yeah, well, yeah, you might have won, but you got a black eye. No, everybody saw it. You know what I mean? There was one thing that I was going to ask you, Richie, as well, when you were talking about it at Cape Solander as well. You had a massive wipeout, or at least it looked like a massive wipeout, where you almost cut your throat.
Yeah. Again,
don't just say like that's fucking okay. Like, this is not okay to cut your throat.
It was again a little, I mean, unlucky situation, obviously, but then very lucky in a way that when it happened, I just fell on a wave out there, was rolling around underwater, and my board was really close to me. And you can tell because if there's no tension on your leg rope, you know somewhere your board's close and you're going to bump into it. And my board, being so, the flotation device, shot to the surface, and it was shot to the surface nose first, and it just happened to catch me in the throat as it was making its way to the surface. And
like right here, eh?
right under the chin, yeah. And it just felt like someone hit me with an uppercut, like a big, rocked me a little bit, but got to the surface, it was okay. Like, saw me board and I was feeling, I just had my steamer on, I just put my hand inside my steamer and felt something different. My finger went inside my throat, and then I couldn't see it, and it didn't feel that bad. Like I said, it felt like someone just hit me, like my head got rocked back, but the pain of that I'd imagined, like it felt like cutting your throat, just wasn't there. And then I showed someone a lineup, and they freaked out a little bit. Said, "Yeah, you got a big hole in your neck." So got to the scrambled up the rocks, got to the car park, showed the boys that. Well, what does it look like? Is it bad? Should I get stitches or whatnot? And they're all like, I could tell by their reaction it looked kind of bad. Again, because it wasn't so painful and there wasn't a heap of blood, I was pretty, pretty laughed about it a little bit. Didn't take it too serious, But sorry, let's go. Jump in the car. We'll go get some stitches. And it wasn't until I got to the doctor's surgery, and he said if there's anything sharper than the nose of your board, you wouldn't have got out the water because it was only millimeters away from your jugular or whatever the artery that
carotid is the artery,
the artery that goes to your brain. So that's when I started a little moment of realization, like that was serious. Like Mark and his neck down in ship's turns, that's things just come out of the blue like that, and can happen in what we're doing. So I always admired Mark's sort of calculated approach to surfing these kind of crazy waves. So then I started to try and take a page out of his book again, whereas I like to try and switch off a little bit and just go and think later. I started to try and implement a little bit more calculated risk taking into my approach.
I've seen footage of that. Yep. Did you get sucked up into the wave?
No, on that one I just fell inside the barrel, and rolled around my board, and then it was just. It happens a lot. Yes, you bump into your board underwater, but the way this happened, my board was just flying to the surface, and I was in its way, and it just stabbed me under the neck. And like I said, it just felt like a good head knock, and didn't realise it had broken any skin until I sort of showed some friends, and then got in. I was laughing about it in the car park, like totally blasé about it until I got to the doctors and he's stitching me up. It kind of like rattled me a little bit at how lucky I really was. And once he said, the way he described it, said you wouldn't have got out of the water. I would have, you would have bled out and be, dead before you even make your way to the rocks. So that kind of scared me, And again, just brought back the realization of what we were doing is did have that element of risk, and to not always just go at it so recklessly.
A day at Cape Solander, my wife and myself found a dead body there, like about 6-7 months ago in the water. Yeah, like the guy had been smashed into the rocks and his face was. We called him.
Must have been a rock fisherman.
I don't. He looked like he was just in boardies.
Wow.
So he might have been swimming or jumped off. I don't know. That the coppers don't know. No one knows.
Maybe it could have been from Cronulla, could have been from River, like currents. The person could have come from anywhere, but that's horrible.
Yeah, 100%. And there was a Chinese tourist there, and he was speaking to my wife in Chinese. My wife's Chinese, and he goes, "I'm going to swim out and get the body." And I was like, dude, if you swim out there, mate, you're not fucking, there's going to be 2 dead bodies out there. It's not going to happen. Mark, what's your worst wipeouts? Because we said for Richie to say 1, but he went and grabbed 2. So you used up a lot of our time, mate. Feel free to also tell us 2.
My worst one was definitely, it's 2016. Similar, surfing a big wave that breaks in shallow water, and the wave smashed me into the reef, and I landed with all my weight on one leg, and at the same time the power of the wave broke on my back and it compressed me into the reef, and with the compression my knee popped, and I just felt blinding pain straight away underwater. I got rolled around by the wave, and the whole time I was clutching at my knee, just trying to hold it together. I got to the surface, and it was Rich and the guys on the jet ski that got me out of the water, dragged me up onto the ski. But I'd never felt pain like that before from an injury. Like usually you have so much adrenaline out in the surf in a big wipeout, that the pain is so diminished. Like you don't even think the injury is anywhere near as bad as, you know, what it could be, because you're not really feeling that much pain because of the adrenaline. This time, it was the worst pain I'd ever felt. Like I was kind of just that verge of going in and out of consciousness when you see stars because pain's so bad and you feel that sweaty like you're going to faint. I was like that the entire time. What ended up happening was I completely dislocated my knee underwater. I tore every ligament and tendon that holds your knee joint together, and it broke the bone like that goes into the knee joint. And when I got rolled around, because my knee was separated, that tore through the major artery in my leg. And on top of that, it tore through the nerves that run through your knee that control your foot, like your ability to move, lift your foot. And they were able to fix, I had 7 different surgeries. They're kind of able to fix everything in my knee joint, put it all back together. But there was too much damage to the nerves. So now I like left with a permanent disability where I can't use my foot anymore, can't lift it. A final surgery that they did was fix my foot at 90 degrees. So my foot now just is stuck at 90 degrees like this. My ankle joint doesn't work or anything like that. My foot doesn't go up or down. It just sticks there, and I can't move it around. It's I was told I wouldn't really surf again, that my career was completely over. And for about a year, I thought that would be the case. Anyone suffering from nerve pain, man, my heart goes out to them.
Yeah, I've had that.
Not that there's any pain that's not nerve pain, but specific nerve pain is so debilitating and hard to deal with. It's crazy. I had a year of recovery where I wasn't really getting out of bed. I had a hospital bed set up in my lounge room. I was on heavy painkillers. Like I think I was taking probably 120 milligrams of Oxycontin. Like, so I'm basically a heroin addict for about a year. Like they come in 5 milligram tablets. So I was taking so many to manage the pain. And I didn't think I'd surf again for about a year. And then just like with time, I got to the ability where I could start exercising a little bit again. That got my like sort of energy levels up, and that helped with the pain because I could get a little bit of, you know, like that positive emotion from just moving around, doing exercising. And then I could get back in the water and I started to be able to swim. And then I just slowly built the ability to be able to stand back on a surfboard. It was kind of awesome when I could stand up and surf and ride waves again, but at the same time it was so depressing because it was like I've gone from professional level surfer to beginner, and I could catch waves like a professional and I could see what I was supposed to do on the waves, but I just couldn't do it. I had to surf waves like a beginner, and that lasted for probably 9-10 months. And then it's been like 4 years now since that injury, and I've just slowly gotten myself probably back to about, I now surf at 60 or 70% capacity of what I did before the injury, but it's just good enough to be able to surf big waves again. So
if you want to know what it looks
I've gone
like,
and
check out his social media, his Instagram. He's ripping again, getting barreled off his
I've seen it.
all crazy kind of waves again. Well, there's the skin graft and stuff. That's a sexy looking rig there. Some more skin, Marky.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a horrible one, man. It was tough.
Man, it was. And obviously, just when he was describing the pain he was in, we got Mark to the shore on the jet skis and dragged him up the shore.
So you were there when he did this second injury too?
Yeah.
Is it Black Cloud?
Fuck, all right. Can you fucking leave, please?
Leave the studio.
We don't want you around here anymore, mate.
But I remember like a wave, like a millimeter of water rippled up and touched Mark's injured foot, and it was agonising. He's like, moving further up the beach, and the water still touching my feet. And I was blown away that just by that.
How demanding he was.
how rude he was. But it was, it was crazy. And then obviously the road to recovery and everything went through was just, again, inspirational, but just, mate, the body I had to overcome was phenomenal. And again,
you know what made all the difference? Made all the difference for me was I was in hospital at a point. I was probably at my lowest, man. I was like you get when you like, there's a few things that force you into like that sort of really bad mental state, like sort of that depression. And it's not being able to exercise is one of the main things. So going from like highly active to laid in bed just day in, day out, like that has such a effect mentally. And then the painkillers and then the pain and not sleeping and all those different things combined. And I was struggling. And then out of the blue, I met this kid in hospital that it was probably 3 months before I'd hurt myself. And he was in the same hospital. He had slipped over snowboarding, broken his neck. He was a quadriplegic, and he came up to my room to meet me just because he was like a surf fan, young kid. He was like 19 years old or something. And man, meeting that kid, it changed the way I dealt with the injury, like changed my life for good, because it forced on me this like shift in perspective. Like I went from being so frustrated, so angry, like just hating the world, just like consumed with like self-pity, like for the situation I'm in, like this isn't fair, like, and that just made me like my health worse. And then when I met this kid, I was just like, felt like the luckiest person alive. Like I could have hit the reef any other way, and then been dealing with what this kid was dealing with, which it's not even comparable. It's like 1,000,000 times worse. And on top of that, man, the amount of courage this kid was showing and resilience, and he just come up to my bedside table, like could barely hold out his hand to shake my hand, big grin on his face, dealing with like nerve pain, like someone in a wheelchair with spinal damage, the nerve pain that they feel. So he's dealing with the pain I am, and 1,000,000 times worse situation. And from that point, I was just like, right, you are not allowed to whinge anymore, like, that's he would give anything to have the injury that you have, like, and fuck, man, that changed the sort of trajectory of me being able to come back and surf like nothing else has. And it's impossible to tell someone, just you're lucky, just feel grateful, like it could be worse. Like you can't just say that to people.
No, because your trauma is your trauma.
Problems are their problems.
Yeah, your trauma is your trauma.
Problems are their problems, Yeah, but just that happening to me and the way that it happened, man, it's life changing. And then it's just like an ability to, like, if you can somehow find that like silver lining, or you like shift your focus on that it could be way worse, fuck, it makes all the difference, man.
I think though that's where, when you share what like you share what you're going through, whether it's a failed business venture, a divorce, a horrific injury, whatever, that's why the power of speech and the power of talking and sharing stories is so important, because you don't have to be a celebrity to share it. Like that kid sharing his story with you in whatever way it was shared had such a massive impact. And hopefully when you put these podcasts out, that impact of, guys like yourselves that are sharing your story impacts other people, because that's, like people that have been sexually abused or whatever, they think they're the only person. If you're a kid that's been sexually abused or whatever, you think you're the only person that's happening to, and it's happening to you because you're a shit person, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. When in fact it's not happening to you, it's kind of happening through you. And unfortunately, it's something that happens. I think it's 1 in 3 girls will suffer some sort of sexual abuse. And they say for boys, it's something like 1 in 6. But because of the nature of men coming out and saying they reckon the number's probably even higher. It's probably around the same, 1 in 3. So you being able to share that story of whatever with someone, whether I don't think it matters what kind of trauma it is. Like it helps someone to, get the right perspective in their life, and that kid sharing that story with you might have saved your life, from what you're saying. Because I can't imagine going through what you went through. Like, there's days that a fucking car doesn't start and I'm fucking over. I'm like, fuck it, I'll quit.
And exactly like you're saying, like the people sharing their stories and just the knowledge that other people are dealing with tough situations and they're showing that you can deal with it. Like it makes such a difference. It made such a difference to me.
How do you both, like when you're talking, because, I've heard your story, your background, like Was it your mum or your dad that was a really good surfer?
My dad surfed like growing up. He was never a really good surfer. He became a surgeon, gave up surfing when he was studying medicine, and then kind of took it back up and taught me how to surf. My mum rode a bodyboard, but my mum was pretty adventurous. And when I was young, like I was terrified of the ocean when I was a little kid. She used to come out and have to rescue me over and over again.
Were you there for that?
I think for us, like,
did you see him?
Black cloud in it arrived yet.
No. So you hadn't seen him get rescued?
No, this is when he was like, way
This
young.
when I was real young.
Met when we were like 11, 12, you know.
Okay.
So the border eyes, but I know his mum Beth, and yeah, I could picture it.
Yeah, I think the surfers that made a difference to us was growing up in Maroubra and Kobe Aberden, the Aberden brothers, Sonny, Jai, Wayne Cleveland. Like there was a whole host of. It was strange. It was just like this host of surfers in this one little beach town suburb, who, for whatever reason, loved to surf big waves, and there was just always
Tony
this competitive nature.
Howard, Rita, there was such like a little core group. Yeah, so grateful, lucky to.
And that just rubbed off on us, I think.
How much with surfing is it now? I'm not oversimplifying this by saying you don't need skill for big wave surfing. But like, say for example, if you want to fight, you might not get to the UFC, you might not get to the be champion. But if you're a tough guy that loves to fight and you train hard, and you're not completely Gumby, you'll always get fights. Like I said, obviously at the pinnacle you're gonna need skill, but is big wave surfing not? And you'll understand. I'm not a surfer, so is it not as skillful as like the normal kind of surfing, but it requires more gung ho? Like, can you get relatively far without the same level of skill?
Yeah,
but you got more balls.
The skill you're referring to, like on the world tour, that's that high level surfing, the performance surfing. That's a totally different style of surfing to surfing big waves. Yeah, so you don't need to have that level of skill like to make the world tour to be a professional big wave surfer. But the mentality is a little bit different. That's the way I see it. You don't like, and Mark, I'm sure will have a similar perspective.
Yeah, you definitely exactly like you're saying. It's not a higher skill level. No way. Like, I could take any of the top championship 10 surfers on the planet. Like, their skill level is like way beyond the way I can surf. And if I bring them into big waves, they can outperform me in big waves. But it's just the mentality of being able to deal with that fear and stress over and over and over and over again to build a career out of it. That's kind of like the difference. Whereas, so I take Mick Fanning, say 3-time world champion, like freak surfer, and I can take him into big waves, and he can outperform the majority of big wave surfers in big waves because he's that good a surfer. But it's like there just has to be this cocktail of motivation to then want to, after you've done it that time, taken all that risk, to go out and do it like the following week when another big swell hits, and then the next week, and the next week, and the next week, and the next week. Like there's just you need that cocktail of motivation to do it, because it's not the skill. There is definitely skill involved, but it's not the highest level of skill. There is the ability to access the skill under pressure. That's like, you can have high level of skill as a world tour level surfer, but if the anxiety is too much in the surf for you, then you can't access the skill. Like, so it's kind of like that combination of your ability to manage your fear and access your potential is like, that's that cocktail, and then the motivation to do it for long periods of time.
You see it too, I guess, on the world tour now. They have some amazing events all around the world, and some of those events are at Chopu, Tahiti, and Cloudbreak at Fiji, and it's so interesting to watch because you see some unknown guys who really are able to handle that stress and that anxiety.
Big wave surfing you're talking about?
No, this is just like world tour surfing, high performance surfing, able to and perform, you know what I mean, in those kind of ways, which it is then, you call it big wave surfing because if they get lucky at that event and a big swell arrives, the waves are world class, huge, and phenomenal. And you see some really well-known, famous surfers who are known to be some of the best surfers in the world just not be able to perform out there, you know, and because it's all about, I guess, managing and handling that anxiety and stress, and they've got the skill set there to perform, like to do it, but they just can't access it because of the fear and anxiety. Whereas you see some lesser-known people really rise to the occasion and be able to manage those fears, and yeah, it's such a cool, you know, world tour they have at the moment. All these different waves around the world, and some of those waves just happen to be at big wave locations.
I think that like the what that relates to is like, you know, if you get a fighter who's phenomenal at training.
Yeah, I was thinking of that. Yeah,
has this crazy amount of talent, but then you put him on the big stage, and then it's just like they can't access, or the moment is too much.
Yeah.
You know, like so it's the combination. You just need enough talent to be able to surf big waves, but you also need to be able to deal with the stress and the fear, you know, like, and that
goes both
anxiety.
ways too.
Of course, that's like it's a learning process, man. It's just, it's going out there and exposing yourself to the environment over and over and over and over again. That's how you manage it, right? But you have to have the motivation to do that. You know?
Yeah.
You were going to say something?
No, I just said it goes. But I've seen guys in training look ordinary in training. You know, rather than like, you know, be a freak in the gym and then can't perform on the night. It's guys who look ordinary at training. You know, nowhere near sort of the top guys in the gym, but always when the lights are on, they just bang, they put it together. You know what I mean? And they outclass a more skillful opponent or whatever, and they just, whether it be just toughness, grit, determination, whatever that they rely on to get through that. That's I think what makes it the sport so exciting, both in surfing and, you know, any kind of sport, to see how people relax under the big lights. You know.
One of the things I want to segue now is, and I'm not going to give too much of a prompt, so just going to throw the word out, but is fear. But one of the things I'm going to say with surfing, and you guys please talk on this. Again, I don't want to talk like I'm a surfer because I'm a fucking joke, but I will tell you this.
Talking it up on the way down here, you got a wave.
I caught my first wave. The other day, all the way in and across.
Yeah.
And when I was,
he's addicted now,
dude, and I wanted to fucking, how can nobody have got that on film, man? I needed to have that on film, you know what I mean? But like when I say it, like because the guy is across the road from me, Pip, he helps me. Shout out to Pip, he helps me heaps. And the guy lives behind me, Joel. He actually competed in like the smaller waves, not the big waves that you guys do. And I think he was ranked 12th in the world as a junior. So he's older guy now, but you know, he helps me. And I think he's got a younger brother named Jackson Forbes. I think that knows you guys or knows Richie or something.
I know that name.
Yeah,
he's a good young.
Yeah, and he helps me too. But that particular day, it was only me and Eli that were there, and I was like, "How the fuck can nobody have seen me catch a wave?" Fucking hell!
That feeling is what you chase forever, no matter what level of surf you are, how long you've been surfing.
Dude, I rang them, and I was like trying to tell people that were like, I was going to ring Richie, but then I thought, you know, don't bother people. You're a fucking retard. It was like,
I tell you what, it's better sometimes to not have the footage, like. You don't want to spot, like, what you felt is the best feeling.
Yeah.
Like, just, you don't want to watch footage, because this happens to every surfer, no matter what level you are. Is like, you'll feel something amazing in the surf, and then you watch the footage, and it doesn't look anywhere near as good as what it felt. And you're just like, oh, no, really? Like,
yeah, it's like when you find out the secret of a magic trick, and you're like, oh, that's shit. You can never see that magic trick again, you know? Like, that's what it was like for me. But my point that I was going to say to you is, like, going out and starting, first of all, it shouldn't be called surfing. It should be called paddling, because that's just fucking hard. That's like
9% of the sport.
That's ridiculously hard. So that's the first thing. But when I'm getting into fear, what I was going to say about fear is the thing that people have never surfed is like the ocean actually roars. Like the wave, it like roars. Like when you're like I'm not even good enough to be in the lineup. But when somebody takes me out and it's like a bit past the breakers and I'm watching the waves, like from, you guys know exactly what I mean. You watch the wave.
Yeah, it's like alive. It's like you're in a.
Yeah, from behind it. Like you're from behind it and you watch it go like that. And the waves aren't big that I'm talking about. And so with you guys, when you guys go out to, I don't know, like Chopu or Shipstern or whatever, and you see that roar, of the wave, because I imagine it's going to be quite a bit bigger than my break here at Sharkies. Do you shit yourselves?
Yep. Absolutely.
The part that's really nerve-wracking is the night before, and if you're in Hawaii or Tahiti and you're staying close to the waves and the swell like arrives during the night, it's like it wasn't there in the day, you can't hear the noise, and then you're like slowly falling asleep and the big swell is starting to arrive, and then all of a sudden you're just hearing like this roar like thunder outside, and you're just like, the night before you're like, oh my God, the waves are here. Like you got to start thinking about it all night. It's terrifying.
Yeah.
So you can feel it, you can hear it.
Yeah,
like you feel what I'm talking about.
Absolutely.
But times 100.
We did a trip with Mark to Tahiti, and we had a swell that went for 3 days. It was like a toe-sized swell, so like sort of 12 to 15 foot plus, and it's exactly what he was referring to. We were staying so close to where the wave broke, you could hear, you could smell it, you could smell the sea salt, and you could feel the waves break. And it's just you're in awe, it's just in awe of Mother Nature and the power of the ocean when you see it, and when you're in the lineup, and it is intimidating. It's like a gorilla pounding his chest in front of you, or whatever. It's just when you see it, and the amount of white water explode up into the air, and the sound, and the noise it makes. It's you realize that you feel something significant compared to the ocean, like you're such a what it can do to you. So again, it just builds that healthy respect.
Fuck, beyond a healthy respect. And Cyclops? What's Cyclops like?
Horrible.
I don't know. It would have been 20 years the last.
Sorry, can you guys describe Cyclops for people that don't know?
So Cyclops is a wave that breaks down off Esperance in Western Australia, and it's so shallow where the wave breaks that it's basically breaking on bare reef. Like
is it offshore, Mark? Is it offshore?
Yeah.
It breaks like 2 miles offshore, like 2 or 3 kilometers offshore. And deep water, breaks on a reef that's probably an inch deep. And to me, I rode a wave there. It would have been 20 years ago or longer. And I feel like that was the closest I've come to dying. I made the wave, but I thought like there was a moment where I'm like, if I'd have fallen, I would have died. And I've never gone back there ever since. I don't think it should be just called a surf spot. It shouldn't be in the category of surf spot. I don't think it's like a proper rideable wave. It's like, it's too risky, basically. The risk outweighs the reward.
Have you surfed it?
Yeah, I've surfed it with Mark. We did a few trips there, and it's just such a beautiful looking wave. They're so photogenic, and that's why surfers kept going back. I don't think anyone's been there for 15 years plus now, but
really? Why not?
Huh?
Why not?
Well, just because what Mark said, it's not really a surfable wave. It's not an enjoyable, high quality wave where you're going to get a long barrel, get spat out, and do amazing turns.
Things a vampire. Like you got to think of it. It's like this beautiful vampire. It's like it lures you in because from the boat it looks so amazing because you can't see how shallow it is. And then like once you've let go of the rope from behind the jet ski and then you're rolling down this wave, that's when you see how shallow it is. And you're just like, what have I got myself into? And I think I wiped out on maybe 3 waves there and survived. There's been a few people though that have hit the bottom. One kid almost killed himself, fractured his whole skull. It's
his back too.
I think of it like vampire, like that. It lures you in and then it'll kill you. It's just not worth surfing.
Yeah,
it's that bad.
It's not a really surfable wave. It's not. Yeah, like Mark said, it shouldn't be called a surf spot. It should just be called like
a break.
Yeah, like you go to a
like you can ride it,
like little like freak of nature, or you go to watch a waterfall or something. It's like it's an amazing little act of nature, but it shouldn't really be surfed. And it's in the middle of these scattered little islands. It's the sharkiest.
It's sharky as well.
Ever. Yeah, it's super sharky. And then and the wave is just like the percentage of falling off on any wave you catch it is ridiculously higher than any other wave I could imagine. And then the consequences of falling off, just make it. And now that I've tried to add a little bit of risk assessment by like surfing, it's just like doesn't even get the time of day. It's just
Because just to put in perspective, you have people from other countries like Perth is the most isolated city on earth, and this place is not near Perth. So you're and then you're out 2 Ks in the 3Ks out into the ocean. So if you fall off and you hurt yourself, like if that injury had happened, the leg one that happened to you, you'd be dead as disco.
Yeah.
Not that because you can't even make a phone call. Like you got no range, no receipt, like no nothing. So that's you got to fend for yourself. And there was a situation that did happen there. Where Mark and Kobe were surfing, and Kobe fell on a wave and hit the bottom and hit the reef hard enough to require stitches down his arm and I cut, like he was bleeding pretty profusely. Worried about cut some serious veins in his arm, and it was it was a long road back to the hospital. Like luckily he was still able and could climb on the ski and get in the boat and get in the car and drive. So I was lucky in that respect. But it was like that was just a cat scratch compared to what could happen out there. And then when it does hit the fan, the logistics of getting help is crazy.
What kind of sharks?
The biggest ones you could imagine. I think that is the Great Australian Bight, which is where Esperance is. It's on the western side of the Great Australian Bight. It's where they've done documentaries on some of the biggest great whites. And I think in Esperance too, there used to be an abattoir there, so they used to even make it even more sketchy because the great whites used to hang around apparently where the abattoir used to have like runoff and stuff. So there's all kinds of crazy stories that you didn't want to hear before you went surfing. They're some of the biggest whites you'd find on the earth, for sure.
Fuck me, Dad. That's scary. So what's your relationship with fear? Like because I know you guys have spoken on this a lot and everything, but like all these things that we've spoken about was kind of like obviously fear. So how do you work with that? Because before either one of you answer, what I noticed more, and this is just because I've known Richie for a long time, maybe more than 10 years now, I feel that Richie, and you guys have touched on it, but correct me if I'm wrong, Mark, or you, I find Richie to be much more instinctual, much more in the moment as far as that's concerned. I find you to be much more, I actually relate to you a lot more, and like I'm much more cerebral calculating kind of person, to the point that sometimes it's not beneficial to me. So your relationship to fear though is different I think for both of you. Can you guys speak to that?
Yeah, I think that's why we made it such a good team when we were like chasing big waves together, because I love the fact, like I'm overly neurotic in that I'll think about all the worst things that are going to happen, and like I want to like do things right to sort of take out as much risk as I can. And if I have another person like that with me, it's like that just magnifies all the fear and the danger. Like we just bounce off each other, where I loved going with Rich because Rich had way more of that attitude that was like, we'll be right. Like, let's just do it. We'll be right. Like, so it was like, I'd bring a bit of like structure and safety into Rich's world.
Yeah.
But he'd bring that extra like, don't worry about it, you'll be right, like, so it was like that perfect combination, because you needed to take as much risk out as you could, but you also, like, when the time came and the monster wave was coming through, like, you had to go, like you were going to take off on that thing. Like, that's what you're there for, that's what you're doing, you've done the preparation. So for me, I loved the fact that I always had that person that I felt for me was like had less fear than me, like that would charge that wave harder than me, and that would bring the best out of me, because we're also pretty competitive, like we want to get the biggest wave of the day. So it's like if Rich positioned himself deeper in the wave, which is like makes it more critical and harder, like deeper inside the barrel, then on the next wave I'm like, yeah, okay, I want to go deeper, and like, and that's what made us work so well together, because I've traveled with other people that are really scared and neurotic like me, and then it becomes like I'll say one thing that could go wrong, and they're like, yeah, that could go wrong for sure, and then we just go like that until you just don't want to do it, like, so. Yeah,
if I went with you, we'd just end up playing Scrabble, I think. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
There'd be no fucking surfing. Yeah. And for you, Richie, what's that relationship like for you with fear? Is it what he says? Do you feel less fear?
I don't think I feel less fear, but I try not to get caught up in it. You know what I mean? As much like I think like just jump in, just rip the band-aid off, and then as soon as you get that wave, it balances all out, the fear, or the the thoughts of what may or may not happen become a reality. And if you make the wave, great. If you don't make the wave, you pop up, you go, okay, that was the worst case scenario. We just went through that. I'm okay now. And then, so just getting in there, getting into the action and getting it going and not trying to overthink it. But then also learning that fear, that it's all there for a reason, and not trying to fight it. Understand, okay, that sensation I'm feeling, it's allowing me to perform at my best, whether it be in the ocean or in the cage. I dealt with that fear and anxiety differently in the cage than I did in the ocean. But yeah, trying to understand what fear is, basically, and learn about it. And Mark's been great at opening my eyes to what fear is, what it's all about, what it does to us physiologically and everything. So creating understanding about it helps as well. But it's always there, and then to understand it's there for a reason helps. But yeah, that's why. Yeah, we had such great time chasing waves together because it was what Mark said, such a perfect little coupling where Mark would like break a wave down for me and give me like tips and on ways to ride it and little things to look out for, and little his calculated brain would just break the wave down different to how I'd see it, which would help me perform better on the wave. And then like Mark said, he'd often try, go on, Rich, go out there and get one and send me out as a little guinea pig, and then we'll get a couple of waves and it'll be all right.
The dummy.
Yeah.
The interesting thing with fear as well is a lot of the times, like, we're listening to like a primal thing in our being, in our brain or whatever, that we're scared of what might happen. Like, say, I know with public speaking, I want you to speak about public speaking in a sec, but there's a book called The Gift of Fear. I don't know if you guys have read it. I can't remember who wrote it, but they wrote it, much smarter person than me. And one of the things that they were saying, which, like, when they said it, you go, that's fucking right on. Like, people are scared of public speaking, but it's not actually like the speaking that you're scared of, like on a primal level. It's you saying something dumb and being ostracized from your tribe, from your village. And it's like a primal thing, And if you think about who we were, we lived in villages, we lived in tribes, we lived in groups. Being ostracized, like if you were the village idiot and you were ostracized, you were going to get the shittier food, you were going to breed with the worst person, you know what I mean? And so being ostracized from the village, it wasn't like how we see it, but we still feel those primal fears, like that absolute fear of, you need to survive. You need to be part of this tribe. You can't be made to look like a fucking fool and then wear the jester hat for the next 30 years,
Also, in sort of the way I do it when we're traveling together with Mark and Kobe Abbott and the guys who are, again, they're better surfers than I am. They're more skillful surfers. If we put them all out in the same conditions, and we're all always go out there and we're trying to get video footage and photos we running, mate. It was super competitive, like really testosterone charged. And I had to like go balls to the wall and not overthink things and just to get a chance of getting recognised in the lineup, with those other guys. So that's what I would also try and like just. You had to block it out, because if I let fear creep in, then I wouldn't even paddle out, and then the whole point of going on that trip for me would be pointless. But yeah, that was another little element on those kind of trips that I had a different way of, I guess, trying to compete with those fellas was different. You always want to get recognised, and that ego would creep in, and I guess that would make me react differently to fear too. Try to not let it creep in. Yeah.
Okay.
I found that real interesting what you're talking about there, Fab. It's like that fundamental fact that when the majority of our evolution as a species was in a time where life was so dangerous, so difficult, and our survival was predicated on being part of a tribe. So it's like life and death. Whether your tribe, whether people like you or not, it was the difference between life or death. And that's millions of years programmed into you. And I see it in a way now, like it's, on one hand, that can be the ultimate motivator, because it's like you wanting people to like you is such a natural built-in instinct. It's part of your life that you can use that as a tool to be motivated to do things. But you also have to understand that if that's your primary focus, like just wanting people to like you, to get accolades, to win awards, to prove that you're the best, if that's your only focus, then that's going to put you in the moment of competition with a heightened level of stress, because you're training that into your brain that's the most fundamental important thing in your world, which is good in training because you're pushing yourself. But in the moment of competition, then all of a sudden that moment is terrifying, because the thought of failure in the moment of competition or performance, standing on a stage, then all of a sudden that moment of failure is so tough to deal with. So it's like that give and take game of using, your desire for people to like you as a motivator to prepare well, but then also understanding like you have to have an element of being able to let that go so that you can perform on that stage, where failing on stage doesn't actually mean life and death. It's like, I don't know, you kind of, in a way, you're running outdated software, like you haven't upgraded our software because it's like the social interactions were life and death for so long. It's like that's our software still to this day. It's like, and the majority of the stress that people deal with in life is interpersonal conflict because of that, because of that software. And it just, to me, it's like it needs to be updated to a certain degree so that you can not be completely crushed by that anxiety. And I for me personally, the only way to update it is experience, man. It's like, the psychologists call it voluntary exposure therapy. It's like, expose yourself to that environment that you're scared of, build the knowledge, build the skills, understand that, especially in public speaking, it's not life and death. I can stand up here in front of these people. If I fail, it's, not the end of the world. And once you get that experience, it's like you're slowly upgrading that software in your head, And that's, I think, in this day and age, that's the most liberating thing ever, is to rewire your brain to not be so terrified of failure in front of people, or not be only driven by accolades. It's the most liberating feeling, because then all of a sudden you start living life governed by what you really like to do, like what really motivates you. And then all of a sudden, like, that's this shift in motivation that's way more sustainable over a longer period of time, And I always wonder that when you're training like elite level fighters and seeing the guys in the gym, if they're going into the gym day in, day out, and their whole focus of being in the gym is that I'm going to push myself so hard in this training because I want to be the best, I want to win, versus the mindset of I'm coming in the training and I love this training, like I love what we're doing today. I love going through this process. It's like so fun. It's exciting to do that. It's like they're totally different mindsets. And while they're both motivating, it's like, I feel like one's way more taxing than the other.
100%.
To only train in that way where you're only doing it because you want external accolade, like that's stressful in a sense. Whereas when you're doing training or exercise or whatever, and you're actually loving it, it's like, to me, that's way less, seems way less taxing. But is it possible to push yourself as hard in that state? That's what I always find really interesting with elite performers.
I think I agree with what you're saying, and I think that it's more the perspective of how you look at it. Like, so say, for example, if I can love it, but if I'm comparing myself to Mark Matthews or Richie Vass with surfing, I would never have, at 40 years old, got on my board. Because when I get on my board and I paddle out, there's kids that are 6 years old that paddle like straight past me, little girls like, and then older ladies out down here, because I live like right next to the water, they'll paddle and I fucking can't breathe, dude. Right? I can't breathe. And then two things that, this is just a little bit annotation in the margin, as my dad would say. Old lady, she would have been like 50 or 60, probably 60, man, I'm not gonna lie. She paddles past me and she goes, "Oh, you're doing this wrong," or whatever. And I was fucked. Like, I'd had to paddle a few times, and then she said to me, "Hold on to my leg rope," so she could tow me out. And I thought, nah, I can't do that. My point of the matter is, if I compare my performance to you guys, I would never get on the board. But I can get on the board and I still try super hard, and not every part of it's fun, but I'm trying to be the best I can be.
Yeah.
Do you get what I mean? So if you can go
and you're trying to experience that feeling that you felt when you were talking about that wave you rode the other day, you know, like
That's
if
it.
that's in mind, that feeling, then, you know, like that's a different motivation to being like, I want to be better than my mate. But there's equally as important, I think, like they're valuable in the same way. They're like, they're different aspects of motivation that you can tap into, but understanding that only being that external focus and the comparison focus can be extremely taxing. Like to me, I always see that's what older athletes that are able to compete later into their lives seem to have a grasp on that way
Yes.
more. Like
I
they
was about
sort
to
of
say
let
that.
go of that.
I think one gives you
Yeah, and
longevity, and one the fuse burns quicker. You know, and I think you do need a combination of both, really, to reach that elite level. But without that joy and that love aspect, I think your time trying to achieve that or in that sport or where it may be is limited, because without the joy and the love involved, when you do hit adversity and setbacks and loss, where it may be, I don't believe you're going to handle it as well if you're doing it because you love it. You know what I mean? If you love it, you're going to continue doing it anyway because you love it. But if you're doing it for those external accolades, and then when you don't get those external accolades, it can be very difficult to deal with. So I think, like you're saying, see the people who are older in their sport are still achieving and setting goals and getting amazing results. I think it's coming from a place of love. They actually love what they do. Yes, there's an element of competition. You're trying to get those accolades as well, but it's a balance. You know what I mean? They can still handle loss and setbacks and adversity. And yeah, I think the more important component is the love of it. You know, that's what I try to tell young fighters or anyone who gives me advice. They want to. You've got to love going to training. You've got to love the sport. You've got to love waking up each day and doing it, because any other motivator will fizzle out eventually. You know what I mean?
But the thing is, I do agree 100%. You still have to. That doesn't negate you working hard, and that's the X factor that a lot of people are like, oh, but if I love it or whatever, because all the stuff you said, 100% agree with it, but you still work hard. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah.
Like Mark Matthews still works.
There's a lot of moments that you don't love that you've got to.
You still got to do them, even if you're doing it completely because you love something. Like, well, man, with my daughter, like I love her. Now she's with my mum just for a few days. Not for a few days, for a few hours. I'll fucking take her for a few days. But I love like it tires me out. You know, I don't love changing nappies. You know what I mean? Like, but you still do it. You know, you still have to do it. But it's as far as like an elite athlete, you love it and all of that, but you still have to work hard. And I think that the biggest thing is taking the comparison out and saying like, I'm going to just be as good as I can be, but that still requires a shit ton of work. Like for me, like how hard I have to work to I'm not even going to say to catch a wave, how hard I have to work to not catch a wave, right? To fucking just get out to I told my wife the other day, it was so fucking funny because I said to her the other day, I go, you know where they're all sitting on the lineup? And I think my wife is pretty sure she thinks I'm retarded, you know, but I said to her, you know where everyone is sitting out there over there, can you see? And she's like, yeah. And I said to her, I paddled all the way out there a few times, you know, and she kind of, you're a fucking retard, aren't you, mate? You know, but still, to me, it still requires, like, honestly, for someone, you guys probably get it, but you don't because it's so easy for you. But it requires, like, because I look at the whitewash and I think, oh, the fuck am I going to get through that? You know what I mean? And it still requires a shit ton of work. Do you know what I mean? It still requires, even though the level is so low. And I think even if you're competing at a high level, you have to be at a stage where you can come in and go, I'm going to learn A, B, C, and D. I want to learn these things. And you've taken as you get older as well, this is where even no matter how much you love it, it requires a different type of discipline. It requires you to go, and I'm only saying this from a fight perspective, it requires you to go in 3 or 4 years, to have the discipline and the foresight to go in 3 or 4 years, I'm not going to be able to just dodge these punches at this level or blah, blah, blah. My reflexes are going to slow down. So I'm going to have to concentrate more on these other skill sets that I don't have. I'm going to have to make sure that I get to bed and lights are off etc. at 10 p.m. You know what I mean? Because I'm not going to be able to recover like I used to. I need to have more sleep. I'm going to have to make sure that my kids are in daycare so that I can have a nap for 2 hours in between sessions. You know what I mean? And that's why it has to be fun. You have to love it. You have to understand why you're doing it. And then there's also
adaptability.
Yeah, that other thing, you know what I mean, that I was saying before, because it's just because and then you not even adaptability. You have to understand the lack of comparison, I suppose. You know, you have to know that you're doing this for you to get better, you know, for you to have gained more skills, etc., etc., etc. Whereas when you're young, you can look at everyone else and be like, I'll just train harder than them and I'll just fucking smash them, and and the other thing is, and I want the belt, or I want to be on the tour or whatever. And then when you get there, you're fucking like, all right, I got here, and now what? I'm still the same person. Yeah. I still have the same fears. I still feel, you know, still exactly the same fucking person. Like nothing magical happened. You know what I mean? Like you might be happy for a little bit, or you might feel elation, but it's not what you thought it would be. And this is across business, across anything, across what when you dealt with your public speaking fears, what are the things that you did?
The number one, like, to fast track it is find the expert, find the person who's the best at public speaking, and that's what I did, and learn from them directly. Like that, because to me, I couldn't have learned it over 10 years. It would have been exhausting. Like I find it more stressful, more taxing than surfing huge waves. Like, and I'm hyper introverted. That's why it's like I'm way more sensitive to that type of performance than anything else. So to fast track it was getting that person who's the best at it. And then it's like, just like creating the exposure to it at the highest amount as quick as I possibly could to get, like, it's like tearing the Band-Aid off, you know, like go out and do the public speaking courses, the Toastmasters, like speak in front of every person that will listen to you, and just do it as many times as you can, over and over and over and over and over and over again, to just like, it's like tear the Band-Aid off and get the exposure and the skill set as quick as possible. That's the way I had to do it with public speaking. And you just learn, man. It's just the skill set. And I mean, it's a lot easier for me because I kind of say the same thing over and over again when I'm telling a keynote story. It's like I've got an hour up on stage in front of them, and I tell those stories over and over again, which makes it a little easier because I can refine everything that comes out of my mouth on stage, you know. And once you can refine it and you know it's working, and then you just, confidence grows with the way you tell it. But it's I just think that's the same with any skill. Like you push yourself into it to the maximum amount that you can deal with the stress, and try and get through that stress, get the experience and skills as quick as you can, you know, because otherwise you just like, it's just such a prolonged period to master a skill, and to not be then to prolonged period trying to overcome the nerves of it, you know. I think that's what, like, and everyone that I teach is like, if you want to become a better communicator, you just got to communicate over and over and over and over, like speak all the time. And it's one of the most undervalued skills that you can have across life, you know, like whether it's dealing with your personal relationships, whether it's dealing with business life, whether it's dealing within your career as an athlete or sport or anything you want, like the ability to communicate is got to be at the top of your list, I think. And like the quick, easy way to do it is film yourself telling a story or communicating whatever you want to communicate, and then just go and watch it, and then compare yourself to someone who's a phenomenal speaker that you know of. It might be an actor, or it might be like a TV host, or a Joe Rogan, or a Fab, or like,
fucking don't put me on the list, man. You know? Don't put me on the fucking list.
Put it side by side and watch it, and just go, holy shit, I'm nothing like that person. I'm not doing it anywhere near as good as they are. and then go back and do it again.
And
do it again.
When you listen to it, like even when you listen to yourself it's hard for me to listen to myself on the podcast. Like, my wife laughs because when I watch myself, I listen, like I kind of stutter, and then sometimes I don't ask clear, concise questions, and sometimes I cut people off. And then I look as well, like I look on the screen and I got like a funny fucking shaped head. Like my head looks like it looks like it's been crushed in a vice like this, you know what I mean? And then so when they crushed me in the vice, my nose sticks out and I got buck teeth, you know, and you're watching that and you know what I mean? All your things are magnified, you know, because on a podcast you're seeing my face, you know what I mean? And it sounds funny, but like it's scary because it goes out to like people. I think I'm even more similar to what you say because people think I'm like an extroverted person, but I'm not. I'm with my wife. Yeah, I talk to her all the time, all day, and she just fucking zones out and probably cheats on me. I don't know, but me, I actually don't like. I don't socialize. I don't have a big group of friends. I don't socialize massively. I don't like on a typical day. I probably would see maybe 3 or 4 people that aren't. That's including neighbors, right? So I wouldn't see a lot of people, and I my skill set is probably of an extrovert, but myself, I'm an introvert, and so when I do this, I have fucking massive phobia because. Then you look at the YouTube comments and they're like, you don't know fucking what you're doing. You shouldn't be asking this. You shouldn't be saying that. You know what you should have said, blah, 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 blah. And I think, fuck off. You know, you wouldn't do it. You know, shut your fucking mouth. But when you watch yourself do something like exactly like what you said, and then I realize all of those things, you know, and then you work on it and you try and get better. And I am enrolling now to do some courses, you know what I mean? To exactly what you said. But it is facing your fears is a funny thing, man, because there's things that you wouldn't think people are scared of. You know what I mean?
Man, we all got fears, and they can be totally different. That's why people are like, I can't believe you're scared of that. But it doesn't matter for a host of reasons, whether it's genetic, whether it's childhood experiences, whatever. Like you have different fears, but all that matters is if like whether or not you want to face them to overcome them. And by all means, if you don't need to, then don't do it. Like I don't face every fear in my life because I don't need to. But, you know, creating a career beyond surfing, the only way I was going to do one that gave me a good lifestyle like surfing was speaking, public speaking. So it was worth it to me to push myself through that conditioning phase. And it doesn't matter what you're conditioning. It's like you just got to get in the moment, feel the anxiety and do it over and over and over again. And that's where that like you're saying, when you're watching, like that's the uncomfortable part, when you're watching yourself on screen and all those emotions and that tension arises in you because it's tough to do. Well, the training part of that, and that's the meditative part, like it's meditation. It's the ability to sit there, watch yourself on screen, feel the feelings of angst coming up and let them go and still be able to watch yourself without that angst. And that's just time. But it's being cognizant that it's happening while you're there, like you're feeling the angst, ability to let it go and have those moments where, oh yeah, I can watch myself now speaking and I can remain calm, and you can do breathing exercise while you do it and just not let the emotional component come in. And that's the same with all performance. With big wave surfing, that's what you're training when you're doing breath hold training or wipeout training, is like you're diving to the bottom of a deep pool and you're having a free diver or someone who could hold their breath longer than you try and hold you underwater till you pass out. You know, like that's a terrifying situation. And while you're wrestling at the bottom of the pool, you've got to notice that the angst is rising in you as your oxygen goes down, but you can still feel that pain, stay level-headed, as calm as possible, and then that's retraining your brain to not fear that situation as much, you know. And that's the same across all performance. It's just that it's exposure, but then bringing in the ability to watch yourself as you're performing the task and retrain the fear. Because otherwise you're just, if you allow the fear to happen, so in public speaking, if I'm watching myself and feeling uncomfortable, and every time I watch myself, I'm allowing that anxiety to come, and every time it's doing it. It's not, you're just staying in that mode where you're always going to feel uncomfortable, fearful, watching yourself, criticizing yourself. So it has to be retrained. And they're those real uncomfortable pieces of skill development that it's like, okay, I'm going to go through the worst part of the skill development. Okay, I've got to force myself or like learn to control the angst and reprogram my brain so that this doesn't scare me anymore. But the quicker you can do that, it's like all of a sudden the world opens up to you.
Yeah, 100%.
Of what you can do. And that's like skill development. It's like there's genetic components to skill development. Of course, you need like great genes to become a basketball player. You need to be tall. You need but the majority of skill is hours of practice, but hours of perfect practice, hours of deliberate practice that make a complete difference to what you're able to achieve. And they're super uncomfortable when you do them, but the sky is the limit. Like it would blow you away what you're capable of compared to what you probably currently think you're capable of.
You know, the thing is as well, it goes back to the conversation we were having earlier. You can get really good at basketball, even if you're short.
My height.
Yeah, even if you're a little guy.
You can point it out.
The thing is, though, it's like all the shit you learn on that journey of building the skills. If you're going to compare yourself to LeBron James, or then fuck no, you're not even going to pick up the basketball because it's just completely stupid to compare yourself to him. You're not going to be LeBron. But like if you were to sit down and write out a program, what you have to do to be the best basketball player you can possibly be, there's so many things you're going to learn on that journey. You know what I mean? And hard work is never wasted. The problem is if you go out there with everything you're going to do, comparing yourself to LeBron, or I'm going to go get my surfboard out and I'm going to be thinking Mark Matthews and Kelly Slater or whatever. I'm not going to do it. You know what I mean? I'm just fucking not going to do it. It's a mountain that's fucking impossible to climb. So you touched on something earlier that I wanted to talk to you both about, is your underwater training. Can you guys talk about underwater training?
Yeah,
Richie does a different variation. Richie does spearfishing. That's like that is like an added element of terrifying.
I've been with him. I'll go
around, chase fish, kill fish, tie them to your ankle, and then swim around in sharky water, holding your breath with dead fish hanging off your leg. Like,
you don't do spearfishing, Mark?
Ridiculous training. No way.
Okay, can I tell you this? This is a true story. This is a fucking true story, Richie. We were out spearfishing at Mary's Reef in Kurnell with Richie, and I was swimming back and I felt something boom tug. And now, mind you, everyone that's watching that's fucking super brave with sharks, I didn't grow up in the water, and I'm not super brave to begin with. So I'm swimming back and I feel tug on the line, and I thought, maybe I don't know what it was. So maybe I swam back like a fucking retard. I swam back to the float. And there was now I know it was like a bronze whaler. It wasn't huge. It was probably, I don't know, like maybe 1.50 meters, you know what I mean? 1.5 meters maybe. And I fucking shit myself, dude. That's the closest I've come to drowning, because I dropped everything and I swam back as fast as I could. But when you're that scared, your oxygen just goes. So I would have got maybe 20 meters. And I thought, dude, slow down. You're going to fucking drown. Like my body was all lactic. So I slowed down, got back to the thing. And then I told Richie, and I said, it was his gun. And I said to him, man, I'll just pay you for the gun when I get back. I don't know what level of cheap tight ass you are, to be honest with you. He jumped back in and went out and got the gear.
Well, your gear you left out there.
Yeah. And so that's a different level of... Yeah, that's my spearfishing story with Richie. But you don't do the same stuff that he does?
No, we have done stuff in the past
stuff
together, like underwater training, breath holds and stuff. Yeah, it's great. It's just like lungs are just like another muscle. You train them, and the way to train them is to push them to the max underwater. And also you're getting familiar with a scenario or an environment where, you're going to encounter when you're surfing big waves. But yeah, spearfishing, I love doing it, and it's a great cross-training for surfing, for mixed martial arts. I think it helps you in all regards. It's so like relaxing on the body, yet create such good lung capacity. And I try to do it as safe as possible. And Yeah, but like Mark was saying too, when you're held underwater with a freediver who's rolling you around, it's sort of just bringing you back to that old cliche of just controlling what you can control. You know, it's just your breath, your heart rate, trying to just focus on not letting that anxiety creep in, and so you can maximize the oxygen you have in your, you know, and not burn through it with that panic.
But you do quite comprehensive, specific, structured underwater training then.
Yeah, there's different components to it. There's like, you need to be fit, like aerobic fit. So that's like your sprint training. So you do sprint training in the pool, like 50 freestyles, 25 freestyle. And then there's like the actual breath hold, which is like, it's retraining you to just like, it's retraining out that panic response. And part of that comes from the knowledge of what's going on in your body. Like you learn that when your lungs are burning, when you're holding your breath and your lungs start to feel tight and they burn and you can, that wants to make you panic, the knowledge that you get is that that's not a lack of oxygen. It's actually carbon dioxide building up in your lungs that's creating the pain. So just with that piece of knowledge, you're like, oh, okay, that's pain, but it doesn't necessarily mean I'm out of breath yet. So that piece of knowledge just changes, you know, your capacity straight away. And then it's just like learning to manage that pain and not freak out about it. So then you can embrace that pain in some ways and stay calm and keep your heart rate low. And if your heart rate's low, then you don't use up all the oxygen. You've just got a way longer breath hold. Like most people, when you put them underwater, they'll panic at about 30% of their capacity of a breath hold. So, and if they don't panic, they can hold for another 2/3, another 70% of the time. You know, usually people panic at like 40 seconds, whereas they can actually, without panicking, they'll hold their breath for 2, if not 3 minutes. So it's just controlling that response is the main part. And that's pretty similar to all types of performance. Like if you weightlifting, if you feel like a heavy weight and you panic and freak out, then you don't utilize your body efficiently, you know, like, and then the same, I guess, in fighting. It's like when you first feel those moments of fatigue, if you freak out in the first moments of fatigue, then the fatigue's going to kick in way harder, way faster. But if you're comfortable feeling the fatigue and you don't mentally panic, then you might have like a little extra sort of gas in the tank. You know, I used to speak to a lot of rugby league players about that, and it's like they have those moments in the line where they're coming on, and if they like kind of panic about it, then their gas tank's blown out so quick. But it's like, if they learn to manage that, it's like, yeah, I feel tired, but it's okay, it's going to pass. And then it's just like you kick into another gear, and then you can sort of access this level of sort of endurance that you couldn't before. Like, I just think there's a lot of like physical and genetic components to that endurance.
Yeah.
But I think the mental part is massive too.
Yeah. I was just saying, I think that's what you mentioned Nate Diaz before. He creates that panic in his opponent. You know,
yeah,
constant forward pressure, his little feints, his little movements. It's constantly creating little bits of panic in his opponent, which, you know, zaps their gas tank, destroys their confidence. You know, and then this elite World Cup athlete just looks like a stunned mullet in front of him. You know, and that's what he's so good at doing, because he's mentally, he just knows his game plan. He's so like mentally tough at applying that, and plus, yeah, he has got great cardio. But you see that, you see it all the time. But guys just go to, they don't know, they panic. They go, this is not working. I don't know plan B, or I don't know. They don't want to be there anymore. But that's just creating that panic.
One of the things you said about the carbon dioxide and oxygen relationship, it's funny, because when you do exercise, one of the things that I read somewhere, a marathon runner or something or whatever, bottom line is, you can always, not underwater I'm talking about here, I'm talking about just when you're running and, you know, you're like out of breath and you feel fucked and people are trying to breathe in and they're going like this, and it's like, you can always get enough oxygen in. That's not hard. What you're trying to do when you're breathing hard is get the carbon dioxide out. So if you breathe hard out, you don't have to worry, the air's going to come back in. Like, it's such a strong thing that we have. So if you concentrate, you just breathe out hard and you breathe in normal, You know what I mean? You'll breathe in enough air. And it's just a funny thing because you see people, they panic and they're like, I'm going to fucking die. And you think, fuck, dude, you just ran up a hill. Like, you're not going to die.
Yeah.
You're fine.
That's what
It's
Mark
exactly
said,
the
Johnny
same.
Gannon, they did create this little Cersus specific workout that Johnny Gannon was running here at Maroubra. And I've actually just started doing it myself while Johnny's been at the Queensland. But Johnny taught us in that a lot of it's to do with breath holding. Is to create, give guys more confidence in the water if they get caught inside, have a bad wipeout. It's about, we do sprints and we do specific workouts, but it's about putting the focus on that, dumping that CO2. We call them hook breaths, and Johnny and Mark know, these guys who taught me all this, is the focus on dumping all that CO2, getting the oxygen and not having that short, shallow chest breathing, they getting rid of that CO2 and just getting big diaphragmatic breaths, good quality breaths. But yeah, it's funny, something so simple of just breathing properly and can have such an effect on your performance.
What's the longest you can hold your breath for, or you've held your breath?
I don't know. We were doing the crew together, me and Mark. We're in a pool, like a totally controlled environment. There's a Bond University in Queensland, and this is kind of like just with no like real lead up or preparation. We both sort of sat in the water for about 3 minutes. But I've done it with Mark as well on the Gold Coast before with a guy called Nam Baldwin, and he did a warm up exercise, and he almost gets you in that state of calm, that state of meditation almost. That we were sitting on like negative breath, so breathe all our oxygen out, empty lungs, and then we sit on the bottom. And something that I thought I'll have 10 seconds, I want to scramble back to the surface, but because of the exercise and the work and the lead up to what Nam got us doing and how calm our heart rate, our nervous system was, we were just sitting under there for, I think it was like a minute and a half, something it blew me away, you know what I mean? Because normally a minute and a half on a full lungs is tricky, but yeah, so that's just, again, learning it and building that knowledge and that confidence of what, you're capable of doing.
How long's the most you've ever held your breath?
I've done about 3.5, 4 minutes. That's getting to, I'd say there'd be another minute or so left in there, but it's the most uncomfortable feeling ever. That's where Rich is like amazing at holding his breath, in that without preparation, when he can do 3 minutes, that's pretty crazy to be able to do. That's pain management more than anything else. It's like, and I reckon that's a lot to do with like being a UFC fighter. Like, you're learning to manage pain to train that way. It's like breath holding, the majority of it is, once you get past, you get the knowledge and you understand the physiology and you learn to remain calm. The next step is being able to manage the pain involved. And I think most UFC fighters have a bit of an advantage in that area.
Do you feel a lot of pain when you're holding your breath?
Yeah, it is uncomfortable. Exactly what Mark said. Yeah, it is. That feeling of that carbon dioxide build up. It's forcing your body to react to. I guess it's a survival mechanism of some sort. So you do breathe again. But it is totally uncomfortable. And I've tried. I'm always like, because I love spearfishing. I love being in the ocean. I'm always wanting to try and improve my lung capacity, my breath holds. But practicing it sucks. So I hardly ever do practice it because it's not enjoyable. It's part of, like, in any kind of like MMA training, the bit you least enjoy, you're sort of not going to return to as often. And that's what it's like with breath training for me. It's super uncomfortable.
It's more like a fatigue pain than like a sharp pain if you cut yourself. That it feels a little different to that. It's more like an anxiety pain. Like it's a little it's like burning, but there's this ridiculous level of anxiety that comes out of that, because it's the most primal thing to survive. So it's like, I don't know, the pain it's pain, but it's like this different level of anxiety involved in the pain, I think, that you have to manage.
You've been very generous with your time, Mark and Richie. So I'm conscious to wrap it up now, but just to leave on a more feel-good story, let's talk about sharks, guys. Yeah, everyone's favorite, every surfer's or aquatic, recreational activity person's favorite topic is sharks. What are your closest encounters? How bad were they, etc.? Maybe Richie, if you want to start. I feel like I've been, again, pretty lucky.
the sort of I love being in the ocean. It's my favourite place to be. With, surfing, spearfishing, swimming, and I haven't had too many close encounters. One that came to mind just recently because of all the shark activity that's been happening on the east coast. I was talking with a friend the other day, and myself, Mark, Ryan Hipwood was surfing down in South Australia at a wave called Monuments, which is a super sharky stretch of coastline, and. Like I swim in the ocean here at Maroubra. I don't think of sharks, And some of my friends go, "How do you go out there and not think of it?" I guess I don't. But when I go down there, I cannot get it out of my mind. It's at the forefront, and you speak to locals, and you say, "How do you manage?" And they just they're comfortable. They don't. They're like, "Oh no, we just don't think about it because they're born and bred down there." But down there, it's you're always like flinching at seaweed or whatever. Everything moves, you're sort of on edge. And we're surfing this wave, and I just caught a wave. And I was paddling back out the back, and I just went over a wave to see Mark and Ryan just paddling as fast as they could towards me. And I didn't even have to ask a question. I was turned around and did the same. And we had a guy, Timber Nathan, who was filming the session, and he showed us about the footage. And Mark saw it with his own eyes. But, yeah, huge fin makes a big splash just out the back from where we were sitting. And thank God that's pretty much my closest experience. At the right, there's been sightings of big whites, which again I've never laid my eyes on. So they also rumors travel fast in that domain of shark spotting and shark sightings. But yeah, thank God I haven't had too much to do. I've been hassled heaps spearfishing by sharks, bronze whalers, grey nurses.
Can you speak on that? Because that's not normal for people, like to be hassled heaps by sharks.
That's what I've got my fish and
that's how women feel about you when you go out of an evening and they go home and the braver ones just go, I was just hassled by Richie. But
yeah, that's obviously they're just trying to get my fish, so they're not coming for me.
Yeah, but what happens for a normal person? What happens?
Poke them off with your spear gun, and sometimes you lose your fish. And sometimes you just realise this scenario.
But do you notice that there's a shark following you, and then you look, and so what happens?
Yeah, well, I noticed because they either, like you said, they were tugging on the end of your float line, like that one did to your Kernel, or you see them, they come up and they're interested, and they, with the blood and the dead fish in the water, or the fish vibrating in the water too, obviously brings whatever sharks are around into your space, and yeah, you just gauge and calculate the situation as it unfolds. If it gets too sketchy, I'm more than happy to leave everything there, my gun, fish, and just get out of there.
So how many times have you been hassled by sharks?
Well, only a handful of times, to be honest.
5?
Yeah, 5 times. And
how big were the sharks?
Around where I live.
How big were the sharks that hassled you?
I was diving off Seal Rocks, and there was maybe like 10 foot grey nurses came in to get my fish, along with a bunch of wobbegongs, which neither are super aggressive. It's sharks that are the ones you really got to look out for, but they just wanted the fish, and obviously, but when they get a bit aggro, and they could, sometimes it's safer for you just to give them the fish and get out of there. But yeah, that's my shark stories. Nothing too hair raising, but
it's fucking terrifying.
As of late,
that's fucking terrifying.
Yeah, well, there's been a lot worse cases going up and down the east coast the last couple of months, but I feel kind of lucky in that respect. I don't want to have one. I am fascinated by sharks, and I would love to do a shark dive, and I would love the experience of being somehow out there with them in a safe environment and watching, especially the big whites, and doing what they do. But I'm not too keen on bumping into one when I'm spearfishing or surfing. That's for sure. Yeah.
That definitely qualifies as an encounter with sharks, though. That definitely does.
Yeah, but I'm not. That doesn't compare to the encounters that's been happening recently up and down the east coast. These are puppy dogs. The wobbegongs and the grey nurses. They're just trying to pinch your lamb chop off you. While you're in the kitchen. It's the same, it's the equivalent. Except for when we've gone down to waves like in South Australia and WA and even Tassie to some Victoria, places where they're present, and you can't escape stories. You go to Servo and there's a big replica great white hanging from the ceiling of the service station. You know what I mean? It's just the area is just synonymous with them, and that's when you can't get them out of your mind. And yeah, I reckon we got very lucky down that day at Monuments. But in saying that, a local just paddled off and jumped off the rocks as we scrambled up. They're petrified, clinging to the cliff tops. We're like, "Did you see something?" He goes, "Yeah, I think I saw something." Yeah, we're like, "What do you reckon it was?" He goes, "Oh yeah, a shark had just jumped off and paddled out." So it kind of put things into perspective a little bit. We ended up surfing again for a little while, but that one just was brought back to mind recently. And yeah, I mean, Mark was there. He saw the shark a lot better than I did. And yeah, I'm glad.
I think the difference that Richie's not explaining is like where you see a shark close by and it freaks you out, or there's the shark encounter where the shark's trying to eat you, like it wants to kill you. Like that's the like, and I've never had that. But like we've seen these sharks and they're splashed near us, but they could have been chasing a fish, or they could have just been checking you out, but not having a go at you. Like that's a whole different kettle of fish. Like I feel like it'd take me a long time to go back in the water if I had a big white or some other shark like really try and get you, you know, like bite your board, or, you know, completely knock you off your board and try, you know, that's a different encounter. I think that's terrifying. But it seems like at the moment, it seems like there's way more sharks than there ever was. We've got 3 deaths in probably like 300 kilometers of coastline just up here in like sort of northern New South Wales into Queensland. Like
that's only recently, eh?
Here, a death last week on the Coolangatta and the Gold Coast. There hasn't been an attack here in 70 years, I think. And a guy's just eaten by a great white that's the size of a friggin' submarine. Like that's in shallow water. Lots of people out surfing. Like that's crazy. Like to me, that seems like there's way more sharks. The theory is there's way more whales, which means it's bringing way more sharks that follow the whales, and then some of them are just too useless to eat a whale or catch a fish, and so they go after a human.
Can you speak to that, because you were speaking off camera. You were in the lineup when the gentleman was taken recently. Can you speak on that?
Yeah, but I had no idea that it happened. I was probably anywhere from 50 to 100 meters up the point from him, like away, and I was surfing up there, catching waves, and I had no idea that this went on. He was like sitting off the edge of the crowd, and it had happened, and the surfers right in the vicinity had seen it and gone in, but then the word hadn't spread up the point yet, and I kept surfing and heading down the beach towards that wave, because that's kind of where the waves were good. And I probably got to where he was. I would have been surfing where it happened 20 minutes after it had happened. And I still had no clue. Like people had gone in and I just thought there'd been a shark sighting, like, which happens pretty regularly. Like people see sharks, but the shark's not attacking people, you know? And so I just kept surfing, and another guy was with me. There's only 2 of us in that area. And it wasn't until the police cars came down, sirens were going off and stuff like that I was like, oh, it must be a big shark. So I went to the beach, and it was only just before dark that I finally walked around to where my wife was waiting on the beach. And so the poor thing, had heard that someone had just been killed by a shark. Everyone had got out of the water, was freaking out, and she had no idea where I was. And I was one of the last people to sort of eventually come around the headland. Like I was already on land. I wasn't still out in the water. But she had to wait for like 10 minutes thinking I was the one who had been killed, which is terrifying for her. It's been harder for her to, you know, like she's freaking out now every time I go for a surf, whereas I didn't see any of it happen. I didn't see the shark or anything like that. So it didn't have as big an effect, but it's definitely now way more in the front of mind, because the place we were surfing, I never even worried about sharks because there'd never been an attack there for so long. All of a sudden, like a guy dies, you know, it's just like now every time you're out there, you're like looking around, just making sure that nothing, you know, you're not seeing anything. It's crazy. It's
And that time with Richie, when you were out with him, that you saw
that time I saw a white breach. Like we saw a fin swim through, but the thing that scared me, I saw a white, but this was like, it would have been 50 to 100 meters further out than us, and it breached and like rolled. So it wasn't paying us any attention whatsoever. Like, and a local dude would probably see that and just stay out there surfing. But I was so scared. We pretty much were running on water, just screaming at Rich to go, like freaking out.
How big, like, what's it? Because I try and say this to people, like, you go spearfishing, right, in the water, and like lobsters move so fast underwater. Like, you know what I mean? When you lift them, it goes, they go. Turtles are fast underwater. And I try to explain that to people, you know, and can you talk to the fact of what a great white looks like when you're in the water.
Oh, you're the slowest thing that's in the ocean, pretty much. It looked to me like a whale. Like, you know, when you see a whale breach, but I've seen lots of whales breach and I know what they look like. It was kind of like that, but it was so clear as day that it was a pointer, that like just the shape of it, everything, the white belly was just like, and if it's paying you attention and it wants to eat you, like what happened to that guy, there's nothing you can do about it, man. If you haven't spotted it, like taken a look at you and got the time to get out of the water, you're dead. You know, like it's not, if it really wants you, it could be a kilometer away from you and you're not going to make it over 50 meters to the beach. It'll get you in a heart. It's like lightning how fast they can swim when they want something. It's not even close. It's just that what the experts and the guys that live down in those sharky areas, they're like, the sharks always will look at you for at least 10 or 15 minutes. And one guy who's had heaps of shark encounters, he's like, it'll circle you at least 3 times. So it's kind of where this, this is the way I'm surfing at the moment. It's like, all right, I'm just surfing in the middle of the day when the sun's high and the water's fairly clear, so you can get a good scope of looking around. So if a shark was going to circle and come and look, I'd spot it from a long way away. See, and the majority of the attacks then happen when the sun's low on either end, sunrise or sunset. And then what they've noticed is that the attacks all happen and the shark will swim out of your blind spot. So on sunset here, which it was the other day, when you turn and look out in the ocean, you're looking into the sun, which makes you can't see anything coming that way. Like it's just like glare. And that's the dangerous part, because then that shark could have been swimming around in your blind spot and checking you out and having a look and going, yeah, that's like, pray for me, that's safe to eat. And then they come and get you, you know? So it's kind of like the part that you're trying to control some of the safeties when you surf, when you can see, when the water's clear, like all these different little things that never used to have to think about. But now that it's happened and now that the water seems sharkier, it's good to take into account.
Do you know Mick Fanning?
I do. Mark is really good mates with him.
He punched one.
Yeah. I don't even know if it was like meaning to punch it.
Were you there?
It's just getting thrashed around. No, I was watching it online live. Yeah. That's
you
what
were
people
watching?
don't get. It's like, yeah, on the computer. It's like a live surf event. It was happening.
I was watching it too.
Yeah, it was great. People don't understand. It's like Tiger Woods, right? Standing on the last hole, last part of a major tournament to win the tournament, and then a fucking grizzly bear running out of the bushes and attacking him mid-putt. That's what this was like. Like he's in the finals of a massive surf event, and he was at top of the rankings, like leading the world title, and fucking out of nowhere, this shark comes and has a go. I don't know. He doesn't even reckon it really was trying to get him. He reckons that it's taken a look and then it got caught on his leg rope. And then so it's kind of like his leg rope, which has freaked it out. So it's kind of freaked out and thrashed around. And that's what, like, it looked like it was trying to get him, you know? Like that's what created.
Yeah,
that's enough. Yeah. I don't know if you'd be making that like distinguishing factor, like in the moment.
It took him a long time though to get back in the water, didn't it?
Yeah, I mean, he's got to release an awesome doco just recently. There was just saw on Nat Geo.
Just came out on Nat Geo, did it?
Yeah. About him
all about
explaining that experience, overcoming it, getting back into water, then eventually diving with sharks and raising awareness about sharks and the importance of the sharks in the ecosystem and whatnot. So yeah, it's pretty cool watching about that whole story, starting with that event when he got attacked in J Bay. But yeah, I agree, Mark. It's like there's always an argument how you control it. Do you cull them? Do you do it? Don't like we are stepping in their environment. Like we are making that conscious decision to take risk and go in the ocean. But with the amount of shark action at the moment, it's got to be a way up of something. There's some kind of management or something that has to be done. Because it's crazy and it's.
We've had 3 deaths in a small amount of time on a small stretch of coast.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah. That's a lot, man. Yeah. That's crazy.
That's super scary. Mark, man, I want to thank you so much for your time, man. Where can people reach you? What projects have you got going on at the moment?
Just reach me on Instagram if you want to question anything. Just direct message me, or I'm on LinkedIn all the time with my corporate work, public speaking work. I'm doing a lot of like virtual keynotes at the moment because the conference world has been completely wiped out with the pandemic. So my career in public speaking is doing virtual presentations to companies, sporting teams, whatever like that. And I speak on all elements of fear and high performance. So if anyone wants to reach me for that, just give me a yell. And anything to do with surfing, I kind of just post it on Instagram. So that's how you can follow me. But thanks for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure. I enjoy your podcast, and I love listening to insights on performance, because I think what you guys are doing, the sport of UFC is kind of the pinnacle of the biggest test a human can put themselves in different aspects of performance. So it's a pleasure to listen to.
I appreciate your time, man. I appreciate you. Thank you so much, man. Take care. Thank you very much.
No
Talk,
worries.
Marky. Good to see you, mate.
boys.
Thank you.
Yeah, Ricky.
Yeah.
And I'll just turn this one off. Keep us on, Loretta. Yep. And Richie, thank you very much for coming on here, making this possible. And man, I had a great time, man. So
Fun. It's good to catch up. Great to see Marky's old weathered head too, and have a good chat, mate. So it was lots of fun. And if you're anyone out there for a free carpet quote, just give the buzz for a free measurement quote.
yeah. So what projects have you got? Just tell us. Well, just tell them where the people can reach you or whatever.
Looking after this bung wing and looking to bounce back from the shoulder op and then cruise, mate. Yeah, get back.
But you do have a carpet laying business that people can reach you on.
I'm just Gene up though.
Just reach him on Instagram, people. If you do need carpet laying, he has laid carpet here in my house, and he does a fantastic job. So I strongly recommend Richie for that, and for ladies' nights, for if you need a stripper or something like that. He's fantastic. So
I've been working on that. Again, my routine's changed with a shoulder, so ladies, please be patient and understand that. Yeah, I'm working.
he has to come in as a police officer now. He can't come in as Richie the carpet layer. He has to go back to the old tried and tested police officer.
Yeah.
So thank you very much, guys. Thank you, Richie. Thanks a lot.